turning now to the struggle for survival in the animal kingdom. We all thought the ban on ivory more than 2 decades ago had ended this illegal trade and saved Africa's elephants. But instead, these magnificent creatures are again in danger of extinction because of a resurgent, soaring demand for ivory half a world away in China. 25,000 elephants were killed in 2011, poaching levels that haven't been seen in more than 10 years. The U.S. describes a new sort of ivory organized crime that spurs on these massacres by heavily armed militias. In many parts of the African continent, murder rates now exceed population growth, meaning that the African elephant could simply disappear altogether. In his documentary, Battle for the Elephants, National Geographic reporter Brian Christie investigated how Asia's booming ivory industry is keeping African poachers in business. He joined me here in the studio. Brian Christie, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
This is an incredibly important story, so really, I'm so glad you're here. Give me the scale of China's demand for this ivory now.
Well, China's 1.3 billion people, and so the smallest fashion interest in China resonates across the world. And in the case of the African elephant, it's leading to just a bloodbath across the continent. We're seeing unprecedented levels of killing across Africa. 90% of those elephants found in Central Africa, dead elephants found, have been poached. We're seeing, there was just a study out, 62% of a little species called the forest elephant, a smaller elephant, have been killed over the last 10 years. It's just terrible.
There used to be, I mean, I remember we thought we'd got a grip on this ivory trade. There's this famous picture of the president of Kenya torching a whole stack of tusks.
Right.
What happened?
Right.
Tell me then and now.
So then was the 1980s. In the 1980s, the African elephant population dropped from 1.3 million to 600,000 in a decade. And as a result, President Bush was one of the first leaders around the world to say, we ban ivory. Americans stood up. They also said, we won't buy ivory. And that launched this global consensus that ivory is inappropriate to buy. And the international organization known as CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, imposed a ban. And that lasted for a while. But
what broke it?
Southern African countries have fairly healthy elephant populations and a long history of ivory trade. And they said, look, we should not be penalized because Kenya can't protect its elephants, or Tanzania can't protect. So South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, they said, we want to sell. And in 1999, they were allowed a one-time opportunity to sell. They called it an experiment. 3 of those countries sold 50 tons of ivory to Japan, and China said, now we want to buy. And in 2008, they allowed a second sale. And when you sell ivory to China, you create a cover for ivory trade, and you signal to the Chinese people that ivory is okay, and now it's gone off the charts.
Tell me about part of your film, and we're going to show a little clip, where you go to the container port in Hong Kong in search of these shipments. I'm going to play, and then you can tell me about it.
In the container port of Hong Kong, 60,000 containers arrive each day. Customs agents inspect fewer than 1%. It's a smuggler's dream.
You can almost feel the scale of elephant poaching here as you look out on these containers, massive containers. Somewhere in here, there's a container with ivory. You can almost feel it. You can almost grab a tusk.
How do shops and stores get away with selling them?
Well, that's a great question. You know, one of the first things I noticed I'm a criminal investigator. I'm not an elephant person. One of the first things I noticed about the ivory trail and the ivory problem was, unlike the drug world, in the drug world, we would never put botanists in charge of policing the drug world, even though cocaine is a plant, heroin's a plant. But we put wildlife people in charge of policing ivory crime.
So you need to put law enforcement people.
You need to put, exactly.
And I've heard it even described by the U.S. State Department as akin to organized crime, the kind of crime that leads to the slaughter of these animals and the eventual delivery to the consumer as organized crime.
Oh, absolutely. The surprising thing is that they've taken so long to call it organized crime. It's clearly organized crime. I mean, ivory is big. It's physically large. You need connections to be able to move something that large and heavy clandestinely across the world like this.
So, as a investigator, you're a criminal investigator, you said.
Yeah.
What do you suggest? What is the solution?
I was a Washington, D.C. lawyer for a time, and this is the sort of question a Washington, D.C. lawyer loves. You've got a small number of people in China causing a major problem for others. So you've got, I mean, the numbers here are important. We have 35 registered carving factories in China, that's all. 135 registered retail shops, only 300 or 400 registered known carvers. It's a very small number of people imposing an incredible cost, not just dead elephants. We have corruption throughout Africa. It's killing the economies of countries that really rely on tourism. All this, and rangers are dying in the field.
So do you see an end in sight? Do you see another situation whereby we did have an effective ban on ivory?
History says the only solution is a ban plus law enforcement with real teeth. Right now, the level of law enforcement is just really shockingly low. I mean, that we could make major revelations in this story as complete newcomers. All we have is a criminal background, and you can shine a new light on this. This should have been fixed in this way a long time ago.
Brian Christie, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.